Awkward second now. What's up, everybody? We're live. I'm here today with one of my friends, one of my mentors, someone who I'm so excited to be bringing to Funnel Hacking live this year. I'm here with the one and only Mark Joyner. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing so good. I am so pumped to see you in person. I haven't seen you in person since, man, you came to Boise. I don't remember how many, 4 or 5 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago when we did the reality show that I think you did one episode. I hope you still do that.
We still have it all. We need to finish. We just need to push it out. Yeah, it's like on the 99-yard line. I will go get it done, and then we'll have it
anytime. I thought the episode that we shot was pretty interesting, man. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff in there, actually.
Yeah, we went down to like this basement and filmed this like dark, cool, like. Yeah,
I still use that video to this day. I haven't been able to beat that control, man. Like that.
That's so cool. Well, for those who don't know who you are, I'm going to tell you my story about you, and then I'm going to have you kind of introduce yourself. But
cool.
Back when I first got on the internet, and this is, man, now probably 20 years ago, like, which is strange to me. I just had my 20-year anniversary yesterday. So about the same time, my wife and I got married. She was supporting me. I was wrestling. I was like, I got to figure out a way to like make money and help, like, to help. And so I did what everyone does. You go to Google and start typing in how to make money. And I started going down the rabbit hole and Googling things, getting people's email lists. And after about, I don't know, 6 months of this, I'd gotten from probably 100 people's email lists. And all of a sudden, one day, probably the first coordinated product launch that I was ever aware of in our industry, there was this Mark Joyner is retiring from the internet, his farewell package, and everyone was emailing, and my inbox was filled with this stuff. And that was my first introduction to you. So I started going, I'm like, who's Mark Joyner? He's the godfather of internet marketing. He invented the ebook. He invented like or testing and like analytics, all these things. I'm like, what in the world? And so I started studying you and learning about you. I kept seeing all these promos, but the course you were selling was $1,000, which I didn't have at the time. And so for weeks and then months, I kept watching this promotion. And then finally, I remember one night, I bought like a $27 interview that Mike Chen had done with you, talking about the farewell package and you retiring from the internet. And I remember sitting down and listening to that. And I couldn't sleep that whole night. I stayed up all night. The next morning, my wife woke up and I'm sitting there like, looking at her. I'm like, can I spend $1,000 on this thing? And she's like, you've been trying so many things. I was like, this is the thing that's going to change everything for me. And she said, yes. And we put our credit card. I bought the farewell package. And that like was the thing that changed my life. Like of all the things I've done, this was the thing where like all of a sudden I bought the farewell package, went through your training and like the light bulbs clicked. And like my life was forever shifted and changed because of you. So I don't know how much I've ever told you that story, but you were the beginning for me, man. And so I've just been forever grateful for 2 decades now because you've changed my life so much. So that's my introduction to you, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself, which is
well, it's probably awkward now for that, man. No, not awkward at all. I mean, I'll tell you what. So before I say a few things about myself, I'll just comment on 2 things there that I think are extraordinary. So one is, you know, normally you hear that story of like, I spent my last $1,000 because it was my last hope and it totally didn't work. It was bullshit, right? So
it was a scam. It didn't work.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad that I was able to be that unicorn for you, you know, like you spent the money and it actually worked. Yeah. Well, I mean, the cool thing about that was I was like, hey, I am actually legitimately stepping down. Like, I don't want to be the internet marketing guru anymore. So I may as well tell everybody like how I did it, because there's a lot of stuff that I did that people didn't understand.
Yeah.
Since then, a lot of that stuff has become de rigueur. The other thing that I wanted to comment on, which is also extraordinary, was that a lot of people, when they become successful later, they forget the people that helped them. They forget the origin of things. It's like, oh, I invented all of this myself, and you know, nobody gets the credit. You're quite the opposite of that. You're quite gracious about the way you do that. So I wanted to hat tip you for that. It's a rare skill, and I think it's very important because it creates a healthier ecosystem of ideas when people are recognizing how other people help them. Because when they don't, it punishes the creator and less people want to create. Everybody gets paranoid. Yeah. So cheers to you for that. So in terms of, you know, talking about myself, I'll talk about a classic mistake people normally do when they do that. They're like, well, I'm going to tell you every detail about my whole life because you're going to find it super interesting. I'll just tell the high points here that I think are relevant. So I was in the military when I started doing digital marketing, and I was doing it pre-internet on these things called bulletin board systems.
I remember them.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you what, I was selling digital products back then. A couple things that I did that I think were significant. there are a lot of people in those early days that made great contributions, right? And, you know, the whole father of digital marketing thing, propaganda, like all propaganda, I made some important contributions I will gladly take credit for, but there were a whole lot of other people involved in that too. But some of the things that I think were significant are, so, you know, my company was responsible for the tracking pixel. We can talk about how that came about, but it's evolved into something very different now. We were the first to do, you know, one-click upsells. Like as funnels exist now, we were the first to do it. But the concept of funnels, and I think you're writing about this now, is of course much older than digital marketing, right? You know, I mean, the idea of the customer funnel, and I'm curious to see how this fits in with you and Dan, and you guys have been, you know, talking about the history,
geeking out on it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that anybody in commerce probably figured out. It's like, oh, okay, I've created a relationship with a customer. How do I optimize that to get the most possible money? That's the sensibility that you have to come up with that answer. I didn't even know any of the basic marketing stuff. I just started coming up with some of the answers on my own. And some of the things that we came up with as a result of having conversations with digital marketers, or not digital marketers, but classic old school direct marketers like Joe Sugarman, he taught me about, for example, things that he did with blue blockers. People would call up blue blockers, and instead of ordering just one, they'd be ordering a blue blocker for their dog, for their grandma, for everybody, right? I was like, oh, we're not doing that on the internet at all. We're just like, hey, here's a product. And then we give them a little pat on the butt after they bought and say, thank you for your order. And it was a huge wasted opportunity. So we started, you know, optimizing that, and thankfully it caught on, and people are more profitable now. First ebook publishing company, first ad tracking company, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's first that people are using these days now, which is kind of cool. And I attribute most of this to luck. If I hadn't been at the right place at the right time, you know, these things wouldn't have happened. But I'm grateful.
So cool. You laid the foundation for so many of these principles and things that all of us use nowadays every single day. And yeah, so it's interesting. Now we've been it's been fun because when I first met you, again, you were the first like celebrity person, and I was so scared to ever talk to you because I was like, oh, I'm a little person here. And like first time we met, you were so cool. And then throughout the years, we've had a chance to go back and forth and hang out a few times. It's just been super cool. And I know that we've talked about having you come to Funnel Hacking Live a couple times, and every time it hasn't quite worked out because you're out of the country or COVID hits or whatever the problem is. And this year is just the perfect storm where you're in the country and you're able to come, and like, I'm so excited to have you there and be able to share some of these things, because I know that obviously your marketing mind is amazing, but also you've built an amazing business called Simpleology that you run nowadays. Plus you know, do a lot of other things as well. And just I'd love for you to kind of talk about what your plan is, like what you want to be talking about this year's Funnel Hacking Live, what you're going to be sharing with people.
So you wanted me to talk about integration marketing, which I will talk about, but it's interesting. So I wrote a book that I didn't realize at the time was going to be sort of a prequel to integration marketing, right? So this book that I wrote called Your Roadmap to Money in the 2020s. At first I was kind of like, hey, I want to, you know, teach people like, hey, what an interesting idea to teach people you know, what's going to be important in 2020 to, you know, for marketing, right? And then as this always happens with every book, I'm like, oh, there's actually a lot deeper stuff I have to get into. And it ended up being sort of like a, hey, here's how futurism works, and here's what's going on in the world. Here's the bigger picture that you have to understand, right? So I'm going to give people a very short version of like, hey, here are the real essential points that you have to understand from that book. Like, I'm only going to be talking for 10 minutes, and then you and I are going to be having a conversation for another 10. I think that's how the timing is going to work. So in that short period of time, if I only have a few minutes to tell you like, hey, this is stuff that I kind of think you have to know, otherwise you're going to have a real hard time succeeding in business or life. What do I tell you in 10 minutes, right? And that's what I'm going to do. And subsequently, it turns out that one of the conclusions that I come to is that integration marketing is extremely important in this climate. There's two other things that you kind of have to do when you ask the question, how do you navigate a world where it's going to get increasingly difficult to predict what's next? Right? So that's what I'm going to be getting into.
That's awesome. Yeah. And obviously there's the world like as a whole, and then there's like the advertising world too, which both are shifting so dramatically. And I think the reason why I wanted you to talk specifically about integration marketing at the event is because like when we launched ClickFunnels, It's funny to me. I always tell people like we didn't buy our first Facebook ad for 2 years in ClickFunnels. Prior to that, like we were doing 100% integration marketing. Like I had my entire team. We read the book, and the book's a short read. Like we read it and like, hey, this is the plan. Like how do we integrate ClickFunnels into everybody's sales flow and their follow-up sequences?
Nice.
And now you look at 8, 9 years later, like we're still getting customers. Like even to this day, we spend I don't know $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million a month on paid ads. We still get more traffic from our integration marketing and our affiliate efforts than we do all the other paid ads combined. Which is stuff we set up a decade, almost a decade ago now.
I'm using that clip, by the way.
You should be using that clip because it's true. And I even to this day, like in my coaching programs, people always come and they're like, I'm talking about Facebook ads. I'm like, yes, those are good. That Zuckerberg's one person you should integrate with, but he's the worst partner of all time. Like he doesn't like you. He's like,
yes,
there's a million other partners like look differently. In fact, the Traffic Seekers book, that was like the premise. Like you need to understand, anyway. So yes, these are all principles that like you ingrained in my head way back in the day. In fact, every time I teach list building, I tell people that like when I learned list building was in the middle of like the Google AdSense era. If you remember this, where like people were throwing crap sites and making free money, and you were my mentor at the time. And like every time I'm like, oh, and you're like, just build a list. I'm like, but there's all these people making money doing these stupid things. You're like, yeah, but that's gonna go away. Just build a list, and luckily for you or for me, I listened to you and like focus on list building. And like I think your ability to like see the future in these things like is second to none, which is why I always trust you and listen to you and keep following you because I want to like see what you see that's beyond where I'm able to see, which is pretty powerful. So,
well, it's awesome to interact with people like you who can understand it and actually are disciplined enough to implement it, and also disciplined enough to be involved in the rigor required to make a business work. And I knew that you were going to be who you were going to become. I saw all of the right things in you, and one of the really important things is the wrestling background that you have. That instilled a tenacity and ferocity in you that is really potent in the business battlefield. I want to underscore one thing that you talked about here. One of the things that I talk about as a result of what's going on in the world right now, and again at Funnel Hacking Live, I'll give people some massive epiphanies because there are probably some things going on that they don't know that they need to know. And I want to use that time to make sure they understand it. One of the conclusions is that we have to have what I call big tech marketing independence. And you said it quite well. I want to make sure people don't miss this. The big tech marketing platforms can and will capriciously cut off your access, right? And if you don't have integration marketing there to fall back on, it's like giving and this is a gross metaphor and I apologize, but it's like giving a serial killer a scalpel and saying, hey, please watch over me while I sleep and make sure I'm okay. That's what we do when we entrust the future of our businesses with these big tech platforms, because they do very often cut off access to businesses. And a lot of people, they're like, oh man, my business is going so well. And honey, let's buy a new house and let's promise all these things to the kids. And then they wake up and it's like, God, my account's closed. What do I say to my family? And it's tragic, man. Yeah. And that for that alone, integration marketing, but there's 1,000 other reasons.
Yeah. So cool. All right. So everyone's listening right now. We are 41 days away from Funnel Hacking Live. Let me click the button. If you don't have your tickets yet, you got to come hang out with Mark and I. We're going to be having so much fun going deep on all these principles, these topics. If you don't have a ticket, you can go to funnelhackinglive.com. There's the link. I think all of our speaker bonuses expire next week as well, which means you need to get your tickets. Room blocks are almost sold out too. So it's like, this is one of those like urgency and scarcity that are real, like actual urgency and scarcity. Because if you get your ticket like in a week from now, you miss all the speaker bonuses and you may not get in the actual hotel room, which means you have to like Uber to some other hotel at night, which means you miss all the late night fun and activities and all the stuff that's happening. So you got to make sure you get tickets ASAP. And speaking of speaker bonuses, Mark, before we got on, you mentioned the speaker bonus that you wanted to give, and I was freaking out because I want it. So do you want to tell people what bonus you're going to be throwing in?
I was just sitting here right now going, say it, because I want to talk about it. All right, so two of my dearest mentors, I mentioned one, Joe Sugarman and Ted Nicholas, and I got to take a deep breath because they both recently passed away in the last couple of years, and they were both like fathers to me, and their impact on me was enormous. They were dear friends over the years. One of the things that I am very grateful we were able to accomplish while they were both still alive, and we built this, I guess, maybe 15, maybe even 20 years ago now. Simpleology, one of the things that we have in there is we have a lot of courses that are designed to make things very simple and easy to understand. I said to Joe and Ted, I said, look, you guys both have such profoundly powerful direct marketing lessons, especially in copywriting. I would like for you guys to collaborate with me, and let's find out if you only had limited time and you had to teach people the most potent copywriting lessons that you could teach people in a limited time, what would those be? Let's let you guys hash those out. Then I want you guys to teach those in the best way you can, and then let us take those and turn those into even easier to understand, functional units of information that people can get. So this course we had something in Simpleology that we were doing for a while called the Great Teachers series. And this one is Simpleology Great Teachers. Joe Sugarman and Ted Nicholas teach direct response copywriting. And it's freaking amazing. It's amazing. And I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do that with them before they passed away, because I feel like this is the best distillation of their two lives. And it's just great.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, both those guys, I study them a lot, especially Joe Sugarman. I spent a lot of time studying him when I was, I think probably through you. Like I got Triggers and all the books like that were so good. That'd be fascinating to go through. So I'm pumped to go through that bonus. For those who already have your tickets to Funnel Hacking Live, if you go to funnelhackinglive.com, click on the members login link, we will make sure in the members area there that Mark's bonus is there for you guys. If you don't have a ticket yet, now is the time. Go to funnelhackinglive.com, watch the video on the homepage, imagine yourself sitting in the room with us, and then click on the button, get your tickets, and then Mark's bonus as well as the other speaker bonuses will be in the members area. And like I said, the speaker bonuses expire next week, which means next week we pull them out of the members area and they are gone forever. So this is the urgency and scarcity for you guys to get your tickets, be in the room where this is all happening. This event's going to be second to none. And like I said, we're 41 days away, just over a month, which is crazy. I can't believe it's here again. So anyway, man, I'm excited to be hanging out with you, excited to be hanging out with all of our funnel hackers. Any final words before we bounce off today?
I just want to say to the folks who look, you're buying access to something, you're going to be at this live event and you're getting all this stuff. Okay. There's no way you're ever going to go through all of it. Right. You know that. I know that. Right. Go through this one. All right. This is, and look, it's easy for me to toot my own horn, but I mean, I'm speaking about the intellectual work of two of the greatest direct response copywriters that ever lived. And it's indisputable. No, I mean, I don't think you could talk to any direct response great and have them deny that, right? These are two of the great titans. And this is I don't think you will find a better expression of their most potent lessons. So please go through it, guys. It's that good.
So cool. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you, man. So grateful you changed my life 20 years ago. And I cannot wait for you to change the life of all of our funnel hackers in 41 days from now at the event. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you guys in Orlando in 41 days. Bye, everybody.
See y'all there.